Hello, and welcome to the Alpha Male Podcast, the podcast where we get together in this tribe and walk out what we were created to be: strong, dominant men made in the image and likeness of our Creator, and we don't apologize for that. Today's episode, I hope, is going to be interesting for you. It's going to be on pattern recognition, a useful skill in a lot of different environments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review of the podcast. While you're listening, it should only take a few minutes, if that. I'll put in the bio if you want to skip ahead. You can generally skip about 3 minutes and 45 seconds ahead of where we are now, and that should get you pretty close to the body of the topic. First and foremost, I am a servant of God, a teacher, a preacher, a fisher of men. God is number one in my life, and everything that I do in this podcast is no different, and I don't apologize for that. A little bit about me in the background. I grew up, I guess what you would consider a heathen. Didn't grow up a Christian, but I grew up in the southeastern United States, what most would consider very poor. Hunting and fishing and shooting. Joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. After my combat tours in Iraq, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in law enforcement for several years in LAPD. I worked patrol assignments and more specialized assignments, where by God's grace, He got me through some nasty places in this world of war zones and some of the nastiest streets in the country. Not because I am better, because God chose to have mercy on me and had a purpose for me, and I'm thankful for that. After my time in law enforcement, I was a private contractor for federal government, for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify, doing private contracting work. I'm very much involved in guns and gunfighting. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. I should say my primary MOS is in both branches of the military or infantry, as of one sort or another. Specialized infantry in the Marine Corps and an MOS that no longer exists. I started competition shooting even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I won my first gold medal even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I've been blessed by God with the talents He's given me to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. I've won most of my competitions in rifle and pistol, but I've also competed in archery and shotgun and even muzzleloader, knife throwing, hatchet throwing. I've competed in all that. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide. Like I said, I grew up hunting and fishing and shooting. I've done it to put meat on the table because I like to put food on the table with the talents God's given me. I don't apologize for that. I've done it as a professional hunter and guide. I've slain all manner of beast and guided for all manner of beast. Bear and wolf and elk and deer, mule deer, whitetail deer. I've slain ram and fallow deer and countless animals. And I don't apologize for that either. FBI certified, firearms instructor, NRA, and a bunch of other 3-letter government agency certifications. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Psalm 144. I've been blessed to be the commander of a tactical team, an SRT, special response team, in a large metropolitan area, where our primary job was to stop active shooters. But again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, called by God to share the good news, a teacher, a preacher, a fisher of men. With that, we will roll into the day's topic. All right, man. With that, let's get into today's topic: pattern recognition. I think one of the things God gave us to make us innately human, different, set apart, we have a memory. We're not like dogs who just see time in the now. We remember a past. We contemplate a future. Those things play into pattern recognition. I'll start out with hunting because it's probably one of the most primitive ways that we use pattern recognition, and we still use it today in hunting. You spend any time out in the woods, in the wild, in the wilderness, in the desert, wherever, you get used to a baseline of noise, a baseline of crickets or grasshoppers or mockingbirds or blue jays or robins or whatever flora and fauna are where you are. Get used to a baseline of what they sound like and how they interact with each other when you're stealthy and quiet and they don't know you're around. You've been there long enough and been still long enough, or been part of the environment long enough, they just go back to their baseline, their normal. And then when there's any break from that, let's say you're still hunting a patch of forest, and you know that you didn't make any sudden movements or break any branches, and suddenly everything goes quiet. You'll know that something in that environment changed, and you recognize that pattern recognition. It could be something as simple as you're walking through the woods and you hear a squirrel start barking at you, recognizing that he sees you and he knows you're there, so you might as well try something else because you're probably not sneaking up on anything with him going crazy like that. It could be walking up and down hillsides, mountainsides, just noting how a lot of the ground looks, how the leaves are, how the dirt is, and seeing a spot where the leaves have been recently disturbed and saying that's not the baseline, that's different, that's pattern recognition. Walking along a ditch or a creek and seeing the banks and how they look and seeing where one spot's completely torn up by animal traffic, noting that as a pattern. I believe those things, that pattern recognition is one of the things that made us the greatest hunter this planet has ever seen. Walking through an oak forest and seeing a bunch of red oak and then noticing the bark on a white oak and thinking that's different. And then noticing, these acorns, they seem to be eaten a lot more than the red oaks. How can I apply this the next time I go hunting? Where do I know that there are more white oak trees than red oak trees? Where do I know there's a whole patch of those? And then combine that. How do I know where those white oaks are in relation to a side of the bank in a creek that's been torn up where the animals travel? Can I deduce from that they go cross that creek here and likely go to these white oaks over here? And how can I ambush them and hunt them and turn them into meat on the table? Pattern recognition. But it doesn't just stop there. It's not just in the forest hunting. Take it to, that I was deployed. If you heard listen to the bio, that I was deployed to a war zone in Iraq. It could be driving down a road, looking at the sides of the road, and all the dirt, all the sand looks one color. And then you get to one spot where it looks darker, looks like it's been recently disturbed. And you call out and halt the convoy. And then you find out after calling EOD there's an IED there. That's pattern recognition. That part of the ground didn't look like every other part of the ground. Likewise, if you could have a pattern going on patrol in a war zone where there's always kids out playing. And then one day you go to a similar time of day and there's nobody outside. Is it an ambush, or is it just one of the things they consider as a holy day? You may not even know, but that pattern recognition can give you an advantage, especially if someone's trying to catch you in ambush. Pattern recognition in hand-to-hand combat. Just like people talk about poker and people having a tell, a lot of times when somebody's fighting, they'll have a tell. They'll do something before they go to throw a punch. It could be as obvious as they close their eyes. Or they close their eyes when you throw a punch. Recognizing those patterns, recognize how that person behaves, even in a very short period of time, can give you an advantage in a fight. We just did an episode on hand-to-hand combat, if you listen to that. Pattern recognition. Pattern recognition can be in any kind of environment. It could be at the grocery store. If every time you go to the grocery store, you see a can of great value spinach, and you know that for as long as you can remember, it's been 68 cents. And now it's $1.08. That's pattern recognition. There may not even be anything you can do about it, but it's pattern recognition. Pattern recognition can help you do all manner of things. Stock up, save on things. This is a sad one, but pattern recognition, generally when there's a big active shooter, and I don't want to get political here, but generally after a big active shooter in the U.S., if you live in the U.S., there'll generally be some group of politicians that are pushing for stricter gun regulation, assault weapons bans, magazine capacity bans. And you know that generally, historically, that pattern follows with gun and ammo prices skyrocketing, whether or not there's even any legislation that gets introduced or passed, because people freak out thinking their guns are going to get taken away. So being the first one, if you got behind, you're like, oh, I've been meaning to order 9mm ammo or 22 long rifle ammo. The second you see that thing happen, you're like, oh, I better get it now because it's probably going to go up in price. If I was thinking about getting a few more PMags, and I'm not telling you to buy stuff out of fear, I'm saying if anyway you're thinking, you know what, my watching and being ready, my being prepared could use a few more PMags and could use a few more cases of 9mm ammo, you recognize that event happens, you get those before the prices skyrocket or before they get next to impossible to get. Pattern recognition. Pattern recognition in business as well. Pattern recognition in business, as in, my boss, the vice president of the company, he gets super stressed out every time it's time for the quarterly review. So I have these requests coming up. I'm going to make sure I buckle down and get all my stuff done and all my requests submitted long before he's stressed out about that quarterly review. Pattern recognition, I wouldn't call it a manly pursuit. I'd more call it an alpha male skill, because you could probably get by in life without pattern recognition, but if you're good at it, that's going to set you apart. That's going to make you more alpha as a male. Sometimes you want to do things within the pattern, but many times you want to do things outside the pattern. By very definition, you don't stand out as an alpha male by doing exactly what everybody else does. You stand out by definition by being different. Going back to business, I know that everybody waits until Thursday or Friday to get their expenses put in. I'm going to put mine in on Tuesday. I know that 90% of the hunters that hunt this piece of national forest, they ride around on their quads and they walk 50 yards off a trail. They sit down and drink their coffee and they get back up and walk to their quad 50 yards away. I'm going to look on that map. I'm going to look on Google Earth and see the farthest, deepest, nastiest, briariest, most inhospitable piece of terrain. I'm going to go sit smack dab in the middle of it, bright and early before anybody else or before most people on hunting day. I'm going to get deep into those woods, let all those other hunters drive around on their quads and scare the big deer to me. Because I was willing to do what they wouldn't. I was willing to look at not only animal pattern recognition, but other human pattern recognition. And by being an alpha male, I use it to my advantage. I go where they won't go, when they won't go there, and I wait longer than they'll wait. And I know how most of them will act. I will use that to make me a more successful hunter. It could be going to a shooting competition. If you heard the bio, you know that I've done many. A lot of times there's a number of targets behind different barricades and barriers, and you'll watch the shooters before you, and they'll all run it a certain way. You look at that course critically, notice the patterns that they all run it in, and then you think, is there a better way? Is there a way that none of them are seeing? Can I analyze that and do it better? And sometimes, a lot of times, the answer is no, they're doing it that way because that is the best way. Perhaps you're watching them thinking, there is a more efficient way, there is a better way, and you step up and do it. And then once you beat all their times on that stage, the shooters after you will follow your example because you were the alpha. You didn't go along with the pattern just because it was the pattern. You didn't follow everybody else. Analyze the pattern and decided for yourself whether or not it was a good one to follow. Again, it's not always best to break the pattern. Maybe they are running it the best way, and if you run it a different way, you're going to be slower. Again, part of being an alpha male. Willing to be different. Willing to stand out. Many men aren't. Many men tout that they want to be an alpha male, and they just fall in line all the time, blindly doing what everybody else is doing. Here's one that I use often in life that I just kind of recalled. I guess I do it so much I don't even think about it. We live in the coronavirus world now, and I do believe coronavirus is a real thing, like it exists. How severe it is, we may disagree on that, but all these mask mandates and all these other things. It's a simple fact of looking at a door. Look at a business and how 99% of people open a door. They'll open it in the same spot, meaning everybody, whether they're sick or healthy, touch that door in that spot. How about looking at that door and trying to figure out a way to open it where you don't touch it where anybody else has touched it? Reach up a lot higher. Forget the door handle altogether. If it's a push open door, just reach up super high and push the door where it's high, where nobody else has touched it. Not just for coronavirus, for getting sick, for the cold, for the flu. I mean, we pretty much know how viruses and bacteria work. Why would you voluntarily touch a door where 90% of the people have touched it? It just doesn't make any sense. Again, pattern recognition and then deciding whether or not you want to follow the pattern. I guess this is going to be a shorter episode. We've done several long episodes recently, but I don't generally do an episode with an amount of time in mind. I do it with getting a point across in mind. I'm not going to give you a bunch of puffed up, superfluous speech just to fill time. I think that got the point across. So let's all be better alpha males. Let's all polish that skill that we've been given by God that sets us apart. One of the very many skills as humans, as men made in the image of God. Look around you. Open your eyes. Pattern recognition, situational awareness. Be an alpha male. Be strong and prove yourself a man. With that, guys, thanks for listening. Tactical tip of the day, since we talked about viruses and stuff like that briefly, give you a tactical tip from my old LAPD days. Don't completely forget about hand sanitizer because the smallness of the bottle is convenient. Often when I was a cop and even for some time after, I would carry a giant bottle of just regular rubbing alcohol in my car. It's the same thing. It's hand sanitizer is alcohol with a bunch of other crap you don't need in there. It costs exorbitantly more than a giant bottle of alcohol that you can get for $1 or $2 or maybe more with inflation right now. But you can get a big bottle of that without all the other smell good crap and gel and whatever else they put in there. You can just put that on your hands. It works as good or better. I'm not a doctor, but look at the active ingredient and see how much of it there is. But a way to save money, a way to be sanitary, a way to stop yourself from getting all manner of viruses and bacteria. It's a big bottle of rubbing alcohol. Super cheap, super effective. Have one at your house, have one in your car. Along those same lines, don't forget about the old school iodine. Iodine is great. Now, don't do like you're doing with the rubbing alcohol. Don't dump it all over your hands and rub it around unless you really have to, because it will stain your skin. It is a great thing for wound care. It is a great thing for flushing wounds and cleaning wounds. It is a great thing if you know the right ratio for purifying and cleaning water. One of the main causes of many disasters is people drinking dirty water because they're thirsty. Iodine can help with that. And again, I'm not a doctor, medical professional. Look up the ratios and things that you need. But unlike bleach and other things that you add to water or cities add to water that are harmful to you, iodine's actually a thing that's good for you if you do it in the right amount. It has many uses. With that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review of the podcast. Tap some stars if you got that on your app you're listening to on, and leave a review. It should only take a few minutes, if that. If you listen to this and you still want more, you want to check out the other podcasts we do, you want to check out some pictures, some videos, things like that, you can go to goodshepherdtraining.com. You want to support financially because these are free to listen to, but sadly they're not free to put out. You want to support the tribe you're now a part of, you want to support the message, consider scrolling down on goodshepherdtraining.com to Patreon and clicking on there for the fraction of the cost of a fancy city cup of coffee or the fraction of the cost of a box of ammo. You can help support the podcast if you want. And if not, don't, and don't feel guilty. My God supplies all my needs, and if he wants the message out, he'll get it out. I have no illusion that this is because of me and the awesome audio quality or the great salesmanship. If you have it in your heart to give, give, and if not, don't worry about it. With that, guys, I'll say thanks. Get out there, be strong, and prove yourself a man. Have a blessed day.